but they only see the person who's
Hello. Yes. So, hello everyone. Very, very excited about welcoming everyone at this fourth webinar. So my name is Isabelle Pujol. I'm the founder and director of Pluribus, which is a global diversity and inclusion consultancy. We have projects all over the world, and our intention is to really help employees, managers, teams, organizations to succeed through diversity and inclusion. So in fact, in December, 1st of December, we had the first free webinar, which was the launch of our book, Inclusion Around the Clock. We wanted to celebrate our 10th anniversary, so we are very grateful for that. And this book has been written by 13 different authors. And the idea is every month, every last Friday of the month, to take our time, 1 hour, to really give the opportunity of to each author to talk about the book and the chapter, which is one element of diversity. So I'm very, very happy to hand over the floor to Cécile Pernette Masson, who is one of our authors in the book, who is one of our senior Pluribus associates, and she's going to give you the framework for this 1 hour and introduce our guest speakers. So thank you, Cécile Pernette.
Thank you so much, Isabelle, for giving me the floor. I'm most happy to welcome you all of you on this webinar. And let me first of all just give you the outline of what we're going to share together in this next hour. First of all, I will quickly introduce you to our guest speakers. Then I will tell you why I've written the book and give you the reasons why this head, heart, and hand approach can be useful for Pluribus, but also for clients of Pluribus and generally for leadership development in the world. So let me start by introducing our first guest speaker very shortly, Michele Steckler. Welcome to this call. Thank you. And our second guest speaker, Lena, and she will also talk about how mindfulness can be useful in the more international setting of big organizations. So why did I choose this theme? I chose this theme because I was curious and intrigued as a linguist that I found many different expressions in the various languages. They seem to match the languages I speak. They seem to match. Like in English, you say, it takes guts to do something or other. And that's just an example. And I was wondering, why does it take guts? Where does that expression come from? That physicality of that expression. And I recognize that in language, there is a deeper wisdom that is hiding between the words, between the lines. And that was very much also informed by the greater wisdoms of our world and traditions, from the Jewish Kabbalah to Buddhism, and been recognized by people like Jung and Steiner in last century as well. Today, many of our wisdom traditions are merging because of globalization. And that is on an evolutionary scale also a sign that for leadership development, for diversity and inclusion development, we do need some kind of new guidance that informs us from the greater field. And that is systemically conscious. So to have a clear frame of head, heart, and hands allows observing the dynamics that play up in a specific situation and to structure it and be relatively simplified way, give information of what is present. And in any human interaction, may that be on a one-to-one conversation or may that be in a bigger setting of an organization. Knowing that we have that information readily available in our own body helps to tend a culture of awareness that we personally are informing the bigger fields, the bigger system, like I was saying, the family, the team, the organization, with our own personal system that is our heart, head, and hands. It helps to spot the strengths and weaknesses also of individual behavior and the preferences we might have developed as a surviving strategy as well to maybe exaggerate certain aspects, like overusing our heads or just reacting on instinct and being very often in an angry, opposing kind of attitude. So it invites us also to include us individually as a living system. And it is like a roadmap that we can use to actually understand the dynamics that are present individually in the field, but also when you're working with a group. And that mapping is bringing useful information forward for change management on individual level and on a bigger scale. So just let me give you a brief example of one of my coaching experiences, as I am a coach and facilitator as well. One of our clients showed up and he was having very active eye movement and was hyperventilating slightly, holding very tightly his hands on his stomach and telling me with many big words and very excited about a certain situation that was quite an analytical problem. And he had teary eyes and complaining about headaches. So just being in that conversation with him, I invited him to slow down and to go into a more breathing state. And I told him about the three individual energies, head, heart, and hands. And he understood very quickly that he was actually trying to understand something on an intellectual level that was not making sense to the rest of his body, and that he was stressing himself instead of being informed by the heart intelligence or the stomach intelligence of the guttural part of our body. And at the same time, having been highly educated, he was also absolutely terrified about all the information that came forth, realizing that all these feelings that were present were giving him huge amounts of information. But by helping him to, develop also a mindfulness practice, like we often do in other circumstances as well, in leadership programs, I will talk later about. Slowly but surely over the weeks and months, I was happy to accompany him. He really slowed down, and one of the effects as well is that he lost a lot of weight because he actually wasn't stressing and overstressing his guttural intelligence. It's also very scary for people who have been, and that's just as an extra information for people that might be listening in from more social or wellness parts, that have been victims of violence of what sort, because that body information is scary, makes you vulnerable. So to be aware of that vulnerability is also important to mention when you work with that kind of information. So it's explaining that roadmap helps to just slow down, and these kind of information are useful on an individual level, but they are also very useful on an organizational level. So let me talk quickly about profits we have as a Pluribus network, because we are here all present facilitators of Pluribus, because we are very clearly informed that if we want to be diversity inclusive, and if we want to be facilitators of diversity and inclusion, we would be crazy not to include our own richness of intelligences. And we couldn't deliver what we deliver if we would only work with our head, which is very often and dominantly present in the corporate world and in the world in general. And we need that approach that is the gift of what we are giving to the world, which is inclusion. and that's including ourselves. So we need our head intelligence, obviously, to analyze the facts, to see the bigger patterns clients are struggling with when they're having a question of diversity and inclusion. But we also need the organizational part. We need to set up meetings. We need to travel. We need to design a training, and that asks for a completely different kind of energy than just analytical that might sometimes go very creatively all kinds of direction. You need the corrective part that is more guttural, that is more in the doing. So what is feasible? What is possible within that framework of 8 hours? What is possible within a framework of 3 days? So it's really helping us as well to form and to write our own trainings and and deliver them as well, obviously. But most importantly, I think within the Pluribus and also with the program I'm going to speak in a minute about, it's the passion, and that's really about the heart intelligence. We have to be diversity and inclusion facilitators, and that's the passion of the heart. But equally, like Pluribus facilitators, many of us are also coming into our own facilitators, which is a feminine leadership program. And that has been developed also including the systemic approach to our humanity, the systemic approach to teams, and the systemic approach to the world, because we are working all over the globe. So realizing what is happening all over the globe is part of that. So for us to nurture an inclusive and constructive change, compassion and curiosity for the otherness is essential, and starts with opening our minds to our own personal body. Especially women that have been denied to feel their full potential actually find it incredibly enriching to be acknowledging that they feel, to be acknowledging that their heart is telling them something about their state of mind, or acknowledging that their tummy ache might come from something constructed that is cultural, but not of their own. And in that case, it's very liberating. So even though in the corporate world, or in our society as a whole, intelligence of the head is highly overrated, when asked, clients of mine, people we know, people we work with in our leadership programs, when we actually ask them, where do you feel that in your body? Most of them, and that's what I find fascinating about this framework, which is relatively simple, actually indicates without much hesitation where they feel the tension. So where the change needs to be done to improve their performance, to improve the way they are present in the room with their team working. And you see that performance that is informed by the bodily intelligence as well, with obviously sports people. But I'm so happy to have with us Michele Steckler today, because she's a wonderful coming into your own colleague and friend, obviously a Pluribus friend as well, and facilitator of leadership programs, and has lots of experience in the global theatre world. Michele, you will tell us something about your experience with the 3 intelligences that you had during your life. So may I just ask you the first question, which is, what resonated in you that made you feel like it's something in you that resonated when you read my chapter that I contributed to this book, Diversity and Inclusion Around the Clock?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here. And just to provide context, my colleagues here are all in Europe. I'm in New York. I'm about 2 hours north of New York City in my home. So very happy to be here at 8:45 in the morning. Beautiful to join all of you. So thank you. First of all, I so appreciate the concept of the book and the inclusion of the book, that all of the chapters are written by different people on different topics. And I so appreciated Pernette, the language and the frameworks that you put to these very simple and, for me, intuitive concepts. And one of the things that really struck me, it's right at the very end of your chapter where you talk about the Trinity. You talk about the fact that expressing the Trinity of the heart, head, and hands is an art. And it immediately took me to my roots, which are in the theater, where as a stage manager, as a producer, I was part of creating a piece of art and working very closely with artists of all sorts. And so I started thinking, you know, the theater really demands this full system of human capacity. That in the theater we need that ability to create and imagine and feel, and we certainly need to solve problems and make decisions and see big picture, and we also need the ability to speak hard truths and make sure everyone is safe. So I started thinking about some of my experiences in the theater, and one of the highlights of my career over 26 years was work Lion King, and I was Julie Taymor, who directed The Lion King. I was her original assistant director. And in that role, I was very much called upon to utilize all of me on a day-to-day basis. And again, I hadn't studied leadership. I hadn't studied any of this and had no conscious awareness. But I'm just going to tell you a quick story about a particular day that remains very, very much in my memory. And we were in technical rehearsals. So we had rehearsed The Lion King. We went to a theater in Minneapolis to put it together technically. And over a period of 3 weeks, it was like putting together the pieces of a puzzle. So you add the lighting and the scenery and the costumes and all of the masks and puppets. You put everyone in a room together for 12 plus hours a day and witness The Lion King slowly begin to take shape. And we were about 3/4 of the way through Act 1, and we got to a scene that we refer to as the Stampede. And it's perhaps one of the most complex sequences in the show. And suddenly the rehearsal came to a screeching halt, and Julie was wondering what was happening. I, always by her side, but wearing a headset, so I could hear what was happening backstage and below the stage and up in the flies, and talk to Julie and everyone who was out in the audience of the theater. And what I soon realized was that there was a gigantic challenge happening underneath the stage in the basement. We were waiting for all of the female wildebeests to come up on the elevators. And I was hearing a lot of tension and a lot of emotion coming from the stage manager and the people who I was speaking with backstage. So I said, I need to go see what's happening. So I went downstairs, and it was a very, very emotional scene because people were exhausted. They'd already made a dozen costume changes leading up to that. And essentially, the wildebeest puppet, which was a big piece that extended off the front and the back of these dancers, would not fit. 6 dancers in those puppets would not fit physically on the elevators to then come up and appear on stage. So primarily what I did downstairs was listen to what was happening, and there were tears, and there was quite a range of emotions. And I did what I oftentimes did in that role, which was to just listen to people. So I did. I recognized what the various issues were and went back upstairs to Julie, and I said, we do have a problem that we're going to need to solve. Right now, let's get everybody on stage, continue working on the scene, and not, I have some ideas about how to deal with this elevator issue. And the scene continued, and then I thought, I need to look at this from a different perspective. I'm going to go up to the balcony and see how much of these wildebeest puppets are actually visible from the back row of the orchestra and then actually upstairs in the balcony, which it's interesting. I only learned in recent years that this is a leadership term where people refer to going up to the balcony. And it's what I was doing literally in the theater. You want to get that 30,000 foot view. And I'm watching the scene, which is magnificent, but with the dim lights and the smoke and haze and music and many layers of wildebeest and these big shields, I realized you cannot see that the women are wearing these big things that extend off the back of their bodies. You see the shields that they're holding. And so my thought was, they don't wear those puppets. They don't need to wear those puppets. They're wearing headdresses. They have big wildebeest mask shields. And it would be a simple solution. The 6 women can fit on the elevator without the mask. So ultimately, what I then needed to do at the end of the day, when we came back to all of our production meeting and notes and how are we going to solve this problem, I shared what the logistic was down in the basement, what could be seen from out front. And I said to Julie, my suggestion and my very, very strong recommendation is that we cut the wildebeest puppets from this particular moment. I think it's the only way we can do this. And it will make a huge difference to those dancers who are really physically and emotionally at their wits' ends. So I realized when I think back on this particular moment in this day, that it was absolutely a heart, head, and hands moment, that I had to open my heart. The first piece is just opening to other people's emotions. And the listening, the very, very act of listening to people that helps them just feel seen and heard, and therefore valued and respected for what they're doing. These folks just needed to know that somebody was hearing them and was relating to their emotions. And then it was an absolute head moment of saying, how am I going to communicate what's happening, help to solve the creative problem? I need to get some perspective. And oftentimes I think of the head, which is so great with analytics and whatnot, but something we do in the coming into your own is talk about that place of perspective and reframing. And are there different ways to look at this particular situation? And then the final one, this notion of hands, which I love. I think of it as the body. And yes, there's the gut instinct, that thing really in your belly or your solar plexus that says, this doesn't feel right. But there's also this place of action, of doing, of taking risks. And that is what I oftentimes had to do in speaking a truth, sometimes a very hard truth, to a dynamic genius director who had a vision, and to just say, here's the truth, here's the reality. And in this instance, thankfully, the solution did not compromise her vision at all. So, it was really interesting for me to start to put your words of head, heart, and hands, which I love because everyone can relate to that, and apply it to the theater, which I think most industries have a similar range of people, which is you have those who are the visionaries, who hold vision and dreaming and creativity, and then you have those who work more in the realm of practical and tangible logistics, and you need both to create anything. And my role as an assistant director and then eventually as a producer was to be a bridge of sorts, which means one must be well versed in all languages and all of our glorious human capacity to bring the heart, to bring the brain, to bring the body and the gut online, if you will. So I think you're muted, Pernette.
Thanks, Michele.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing this experience with us all, because it's really about what's all about in this chapter. But this experience you had was when you were quite a bit younger than today. And over the years, you've been reading a lot and practicing a lot, and you are an inspiring leader within your field. It's obviously related still to the stage, but is also related to corporate settings now. What was the development there? What's happened to you in the last couple of years that made you more aware, to develop that awareness, that consciousness about head, hearts, and hands?
Wow, there have been so many influences. It's making me think about the fact that as a youngster, I was not a good student. I felt I was not a good student in terms of the intellectual classroom learning. But what I've learned over the years is that I'm an experiential learner. And I learn very quickly and very deeply when it is experiential. But although I trained in the theater, had a degree in theater, I really learned what I learned on the job. And the same has been true in this latest chapter of my life over the last 5.5 years or so. So I have learned from master facilitators and consultants and coaches, many of whom I initially met through the Coming Into Your Own, the women's leadership program. And that was where I was first introduced to this notion, and it was framed as the archetypes, the Jungian archetypes of a magician, warrior, and sovereign. And then I started to connect that to Native American and other wisdom traditions, and also just the intuitive, what we find both astrologically and in nature in terms of water, air, earth, and fire. And so I've been playing around for the last few years with many different ways of languaging it. The notion of feeling, thinking, doing, and being, that we all have these components. And so in my way of sense making, I've had many dear colleagues who influenced me. One of them is my sister, Michele Steckler, who is a professor at the University of, at Oregon Health Sciences University out in Portland, Oregon. And she teaches leadership to people in the medical profession. I'm actually teaching with her next week, which I'm very excited about. And she's given me two wonderful gifts that I'll share briefly here. One is the notion that everything we need as a leader is right here, our whole body. If I was standing, I would be gesturing all the way down to my feet. And this is our instrument. Again, for me as a theater lover and practitioner, whether making the analogy of a musician or of an actor, a singer, a dancer, our bodies are our instruments. And it is the same in, I believe, any and every profession, but most especially as leaders. And so the notion of getting to know your instrument, learning how to tune your instrument, and then practicing, which, athletes practice, again, singers practice. Anyone who has a craft or a skill of any sort understands how important it is to practice. Yo-Yo Ma practices. You're never done practicing. And so I've come to think of this work in the realm of leadership and tuning my own instrument as requiring daily practice. It's, in a sense, for me, a form of human sustainability, which I'm deeply interested in. How do we nourish ourselves, these natural resources of heart, mind, body, and spirit? I add spirit to this trinity, although I love the notion of the Trinity. That's brilliant. So how do I nourish this? It's practicing and getting to know, but it's also, these are natural resources, just as water on this great planet of ours, or air, or gems, and anything that we can utilize for our, not just our pleasure, but our sustenance. So one last thing on my dear sister Nikki, a tool that I realize segues perfectly with this Trinity, something that she and I refer to as the three questions. And this actually came from a woman, Jessie Reeder, who wrote a wonderful book called Black Holes and Energy Pirates. I highly recommend it. And the three questions is a tool, I think of it as a back pocket tool, that once you know this, You can use it with yourself or with anyone around you at any time. And the three questions are this. The three questions are, what are you feeling? What is that about? And what do you want? So the feeling is, it's just keying into that body intelligence, that heart intelligence. What is the emotion? And what is that about goes right to the head. What is your story about that? Because we're constantly making up stories. The why of the feeling. And then what do you want is all about the action, or again, the coming into your own. It's sort of a combination of warrior and sovereign. It's what do I want in this situation, which we oftentimes forget. So I use the three questions frequently to just help ground myself, because the other thing is, just from a brain science perspective, the minute you name the emotion and then ask the question of what is that about, you move into that frontal part of your brain that helps calm the emotion a little bit. And then when you ask what you want, it deepens it. So do I have 2 minutes to share an example of that?
Yeah, 2 minutes max.
Okay. So my example is being in a very emotional situation with my mother, who was having some health issues. And I was all worked up because I had to go and be with her and had work happening. And I went out for a walk and I asked myself the three questions. I said, what are you feeling? I'm angry. I'm angry and frustrated. What is that about? I have work to do. I'm supposed to be at home right now doing this work. What do you want? I want everything to be okay. I want to go home now. And then I asked again. And this is part of the practice, and the tool is to ask repeatedly. So I came back to, what am I feeling? And in that moment, I suddenly felt a swell of emotion. And I said, I feel sad. I feel such sadness. And the tears came. And I said, what is that about? I said, I love my mother so much, and I want her to be okay. And that went right into the want. What do you want? I want to find a way to make sure she's going to be safe right now and have the care that she needs and whatnot. And I went back into the house, and instead of being angry and frustrated and not very proud of my behavior, I had such compassion, and I felt such gentleness and warmth. And I just settled into, I'm here, and what can I do to support this situation? So I hope that tool might be useful to anyone. And it's great to speak with someone else as well, to ask a partner, a colleague, what's happening? What are you feeling? Anyway, I'll end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michele, for this contribution. Very clear examples you contributed to this setting, because I think they speak more than any theory that can be put around it. Thank you so much. And I hope we have a quick occasion to just chat, the three of us, later on as well. So I would like to invite Lena into this conversation, asking you, Lena, the same question as I just asked Michele. Is what resonated in you when you actually were reading the chapter Head, Hearts and Hands that made you want to also contribute to this webinar?
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be here, and we're very honored to speak to this amazing community with such a great vision and such great personalities. And this is what I felt when I read the book for the first time. In every page, I was thinking, wow, I want to meet this person, and I want to meet and know more about her, and see her or him, and feel him or her, and discover more. And so thank you very much for sharing all the tools and the knowledge and also the personal experiences. Especially in the chapter Head, Heart and Hands, I felt very much connected to the attitude you describe, or to the ideal situation where all of the centers are aligned, right? So you're describing that we all should, rather than being heads on legs, right? Or human beings who are not connected at all to themselves, we should all appreciate those centers and connect to them, to the heads, you know, the rational thinking, the analyzing, right? The head is not bad. What happens is that we tend to disconnect from the other two centers, right? So what you propose is to connect all of them in order to be able to find creative solutions, to be able to connect to ourselves, so I can connect to others, right? How can I connect to others when I can't connect to myself? And of course, connecting to your heart allows you to have, as a leader or a coach or a facilitator, allows you to have or to create this connection to the other person, to open your heart, to be more compassionate, to be more empathetic, to really enter into the map or into the world of the other person, right? And the gut, of course, how many times as leaders or employees or facilitators or trainers, how often are we in situations where we need to connect to this courage, to this guts, right? To this instinct inside us. So this is the connection, this is the interest that I had when I first read your chapter. Later on, I read it over and over again because I find it so fascinating and so interesting. And especially as a trainer and facilitator, I think this is the base. A coach or facilitator who is not connected to the three centers, it's very challenging to do a good job. In my point of view, to be able to create that rapport with your client, or in a facilitation situation where you do the debrief, what you need to develop is a competence of active listening, of listening behind the lines and behind the words, right? And if you only act from your head, it's really hard to have this profound dimension of listening, and this profound dimension of being present for your clients or for your team if you're a leader. So this is the connection that I feel to your chapter. Thank you very much for writing it and for spreading it around.
Thank you, Lena, for this first part of your contribution, because what interests me, you are obviously a Pluribus facilitator. Next to that, you are self-employed and you facilitate many leadership programs in Spain, where you're living actually at the moment in Barcelona. What makes me curious is, how do you find that the mindfulness practice of this frame, or whatever we want to call it, head, heart and hands, is the corporate world, is the bigger scientific world ready to actually include that also in, let's put it, also in the politics, to include it also in our way we think about creating a caring economy, how we create a caring world altogether, which is obviously sustainable for humanity, but also sustainable for the planet itself. What is your experience there? What are the challenges you see?
So if you ask me if the corporate world is prepared for mindfulness, my answer would be no. At the same time, if you ask me if the corporate world needs mindfulness, I would say definitely yes. And I think, or from my experience, mindfulness is a movement that slowly but stably is entering into the world, not because of the corporate world, not because the corporate world wants it, but because it's needed. And why does it need it? We know that 40 million of Europeans are actually stressed by the end of the day. They're stressed at work. They're not able to connect to the three centers. When you're stressed, it's pretty hard to ask you all the questions that Michele just mentioned, that are actually very, very important questions. But when you have deadlines to meet and you need to be productive, and you have 5 clients waiting for your answer, and the boss screaming at you, and at the same time you need to manage a team where there are lots of conflict, it's pretty hard to just ask you questions about your intuition or connect to your gut, right? So every time when I ask my leaders or my coaching colleagues, you know, when was the last time you actually felt connected to your three centers or felt connected to yourself? You know, they would look at me like, what are you talking about? You know, I don't even have time for connecting to my dog, right? So, you know, and this of course leads on the long run to absenteeism at work. So it has, you know, we have studies that show us that 50 or 60% of all cases of absenteeism are due stress is responsible for 50 or 60% of cases of absenteeism. So it is a huge cost also at work. So we are not only talking about the health part or the disadvantage, you know, in terms of health, stress, and all the consequences like reduction of productivity, leaders who are not able to connect to the teams, lack of empathy, right? So these are the consequences that companies more and more are noticing, and now they're asking themselves, okay, so what do we do? You know, we need to do something about it. And of course, there are different manners of handling this modern epidemic that is stress nowadays. And mindfulness is actually one of them. And it's a very effective method. It's scientifically proven. So there are tons of studies. There are actually 400 studies every year that describes the different benefits of mindfulness, which, you know, in terms of empathy, in terms of productivity, in terms of relationships that are so important in the corporate world, right? As a leader or employee, if you are not a team player, if you're not able to create relationships, then you will have a tough time working in that company, right? So mindfulness, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is, there are different definitions, and one of the easiest one that I think simple is beautiful, is just mindfulness. Being present means being present and paying attention to the present moment without judgment, right? And it's easier to say than to do, right? Because most of the time we are not paying attention to the present moment. So even if we are doing something, or our body is there, our mind is somewhere else. Normally either in the future or in the past. So we are either thinking about fantasies in the future, something that's going to happen, or maybe something I need to do tomorrow or later on, or we are thinking about the past, you know, sometimes regretting the past, or sometimes thinking, I should have said it in a different way. So our bodies are there, but most of the time our minds are not. So mindfulness helps us to get back to ourselves, to bring our mind home, and to be able to connect to all the three centers, to the Trinity: the head, the heart, and the gut. So it's a great tool to help us managing the Trinity and to help us practicing the Trinity. And as we are talking about practice, and I found it lovely, Michele, what you said about tuning the instrument. So if you feel like it, I would propose a little practice, just to do a little 5 minutes centering practice, a mindfulness practice, just for you to see that it is very easy to do. We don't need to, it is not no witchy thing. I will not bring my glass bowl here and do some crazy stuff, because sometimes companies think, you know, when you tell them, oh, mindfulness, oh my God, that there's this new age witch coming to us and we will need to do some crazy yoga position. Not true. We can do it in every environment. We can do it, you know, with whatever you are. You don't need any other tools. And I would like to invite you and demonstrate that it's as easy as it sounds by inviting you to a little practice. Are you up for it?
Why
Thank
not?
you so much, Lena. I think it's a wonderful offering you're bringing to this call, which is experimental, which we love within the CIO community, and also obviously within this Pluribus network. We are always in the experimental mood as well with our clients. So absolutely, and we do have time for it. So I will clock it for 5 minutes. So if we keep that in mind,
Perfect.
it would be a wonderful gift to bring to everybody present. Thank you.
Great. All right. Great. Perfect. Thank you very much. So I would invite all of you to just stay where you are on your chair. The only thing, put your feet on the floor, legs straight, without relax. And I would invite you not to stare at the screen, but maybe have a soft gaze somewhere in the room where you are. And we can start with your eyes open or your eyes closed, whatever you choose and to do and where you feel more comfortable with. I propose to start with your eyes open and just have this very soft gaze in the room, being conscious of where you are. And breathe in and breathe out consciously. And the first 5 breaths, I would invite you to breathe a little bit more deeply than usually. So breathing in and out through your mouth. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. When you're ready, with the next exhalation, just gently close your eyes. And now with your eyes closed, it is a good moment to notice your body, how you sit on the chair, your feet on the ground. Becoming conscious of the space around you with your eyes closed. Listening to the sounds inside you, the sounds in the room, the sounds in the building that you are in, or outside of the building. And rather than looking for sounds, just allow the sounds to come to you. Returning your breath to your natural breathing. Now bringing your attention to your body, to your feet on the ground, your body on the chair, and your hands resting on your legs. Now is a good moment to draw your attention to your breathing. How you inhale and how you exhale, without wanting to change anything. Just observing the inhalation and the inhalation, how the air comes in and how it leaves your body again. Now counting every breath. 1, every inhalation. 2, exhalation. 3, inhale. 4, exhale, until you count until 10. And then when you arrive at 10, you start counting back until 1 again. without thinking, without analyzing, without judging, simply connecting to the breath. And bringing your mind home to your body by connecting to your breath, by connecting to the now and here. Now again, bringing your attention to your body, how your body feels. With your feet and the floor, body on the chair. Breathing in and breathing out. With your eyes closed, being aware of the room that you're in. And slowly, when you feel ready, then open your eyes. And maybe stretch a little bit. Becoming aware how you're feeling now and how you felt before. Enjoying the connection, your centers of the Trinity, with your mind being connected to your body. So I hope you all feel well. And I hope you enjoyed this little practice. And this was only 5 minutes. So imagine the benefits of a practice like this every day for 10, 15, and 20 minutes. And imagine if we all could benefit from it at work. Imagine a meeting starting with exercise like this. There are more and more companies who actually start a meeting with a 5 or 10 minutes exercise. And from what I heard, the outcomes and the results of such meetings are amazing. People are saying that they're able to connect to each other. They start to really listen to each other. They are able to not only analyze things, but also to find creative solutions to things. And in a world more and more connected, in a world, cooperative world, more and more competitive, finding creative solutions is the key for a company to survive. So it doesn't only give us benefits on the interpersonal and level and intrapersonal level, but also on a corporate level, or let's say the hard part of the corporate world, which are results, which is return of investment, which are budgets. So I leave it to you, your judgment on this, and thank you very much for joining me and for sharing these beautiful moments of connections with me.
Thank you so much, Lena, for sharing that with us, because it's been a wonderful gift, especially in the context of Head, Heart and Hands. And I'm most thankful because I realized that it really helps us to slow down. And as we are approaching the end of this webinar, I would just like to, thank you for this giveaway, actually, for everybody who is listening in and the future listeners and watchers of this program that will be published on Pluribus, because it's such an important gift to bring into the world. And it's far from being airy-fairy or witchy or whatever. I think that by being who we are within the Pluribus network and who we are within the community, your own network as well. It's what we have to bring into the world. It's exactly what you let us experience, and to have that, well, that awareness, simply that. So I would like to thank you very, very much, Lena, for sharing this. And again, Michele, thanking you so much for your energy and inspiring contribution as well, experience from the stage and behind the scenes of The Lion King. It's been most inspiring, and I'm most grateful that you were both present in this webinar, and most grateful to Isabel for having trusted me to write this chapter in her book, and our book of the Pluribus. And so I'll give back the words and the stage to Isabel. Thank you so much, all of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you to the three of you. I mean, I have to say, I'm still, you know, in this very gratefulness, you know, mindset, because I think that this session was very, very insightful, very true, very honest. And, you know, most of the time when we're working with organizations, people are asking, but what do you mean by inclusion? You know, what is this funny words? What do you mean by that? We tend to understand what is diversity, but what's inclusion? And I think that the way that Cécile Pernette, you have led this conversation with Michele and Lena is a testimony. It's for inclusion. I think inclusion, it's about having this kind of very, very simple conversation. I will use this simple is beautiful, but this is simple. So for me, you know, I'm keeping, I wrote two big sentences, but they are very simple. I think first Michele said, you know, as leader, our body is our instrument. And Lena, she said, being present, you know, without judgment. So inclusion is really what is for me the link between everything we do. And we are really trying to encourage the connection between mindfulness and inclusion, especially in the program, in the intervention that we are doing with our clients. And I'm really thankful to Cécile Pernette for having chosen that topic for your chapter, because I think that, you know, it needed to be in the book, you know, head, heart and hands. It's really the cornerstone of inclusion. So thank you, everyone. This session has been recorded, so we will be able to send the link to everyone, even those who unfortunately couldn't make it. So this will be sent around. So thank you, everyone. I will close the session. Un grand merci. The next free webinar will take place on the 28th of April, 2:30 Brussels time, and it will be hosted by Marcelo Agolti, who is based in Argentina and who has written the chapter on unconscious bias with a series of very specific case studies. So you will, of course, receive the invitation and the link nearer the time. So thank you all. Thank you, Cécile Pernette, Michele, Lena. Thank you for your honesty and genuine contribution. Very, very appreciated. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.